recently I was contacted by a friend of mine who was working on a project, and he wanted to show rope handles on the chest that he was making. It wasn't a shaker style chest like this, but I'm just using this as an example. Anyway, I showed him how to do this, and he suggested that maybe this would be a good topic for the blog. So let's take a look at how I created that handle. Alright, so blank screen, we'll get started here. The first thing I'm going to do is create a box that I can use as a guide for drawing a curve in 3 dimensions. And I'm going to start just by dragging a rectangle. It doesn't really matter where I start this one because I'm going to move it, but let's make it 6 by 4 inches, and then I'm going to select it all. And what I want to do is I want to put the back edge here at a very specific spot. And rather than doing some layout with guidelines, which I could do, I'm going to move this thing. I want to make sure I'll just stay on the ground plane. But I'm going to type an open square bracket, and then I want the X, which is parallel to the red axis. I want that to be 0. I want that point to be back in the green direction, 3/4 of an inch. So I typed comma 0.75, comma, and because I'm not changing the vertical direction, I don't even need to type the third coordinate. I just hit enter and it goes back there. Now I'm going to switch to push-pull, and I don't know, let's go down 3 inches and see what we think of that. And I'm going to put a guideline on the red axis because I want to identify these points. Alright, so switch to X-ray so you can see inside, see what's going on here, and I'm going to use the classic Bezier curve tool. I'm going to start at that intersection, come over to this one, and I'm just going to, I don't know, we'll put one at the midpoint there and one at the corner there. So this box again is just sort of giving me some locations for placing my control points, my initial control points. And if I wanted to, I could move those control points and change where they are. But I think I will. There we go. I'll put it back where it was. So you can edit that shape if you want, just by moving those control points. And you can always come back to that curve later if you wanted to and move them, but I think for now this will work. So now we get rid of everything except the curve and these 2 edge segments, which are 3/4 of an inch long. And now I'm going to select all of that geometry and weld it. I've got a keyboard shortcut for that. That makes this act as a single entity. Let's get out a X-ray here before I forget. And we're done with the guideline, so we'll get rid of that. Now I'm going to use helix along curve. This is an extension that is freely available. And it's going to draw, in this case, it's going to make an extrusion that, like one of the strands of the rope. And I think I'll use 1/4 of an inch for the radius, and I'm going to, let's change this. We don't need 16. That make it look more like a phone cord or something. Let's see if 5 looks all right. sections per lap, the higher that number, the shorter the little bits of geometry that are created will be, and the more geometry you end up with. I'm going to choose that I want to create a tube, and I'm leaving all this other stuff alone for what it's worth. I'm going to make the tube radius 1/4 of an inch also, and I'd like it to be a little bit smoother than 8 sides. I think I'll just go with 12 though. I'm not going to get too crazy with that. And we'll click OK and take a quick look at that. I think that works. And I'm going to come back and do this again. This time I'm going to change the phase to 120. Since I'm doing a 3-strand rope, each strand will be 120 degrees out of phase with the previous one. But I can leave all these other numbers the same. And I'll do it one more time. And this time I'll make it 240. And there we go. Now it looks kind of like 3-strand rope. I'm going to switch to wireframe next. You can see that the path is still selected, so I'm going to delete that because I don't need it. And then each of the strands has a center line, and I don't need that, so I'm going to open the groups for editing one at a time and just select that center line and get rid of it. And then we can go back to that. Go back to monochrome in this case. The other thing I'm going to do, because I don't know what will happen down the road and I want the option to be able to edit multiple copies of this easily, these are all groups, and I want them to be components. So I'm going to choose, right-click on each one of these just one at a time and give it a name. Strand 1, Strand 2, and Strand 3. You wouldn't really have to do that, of course, but I kind of like that, having everything components. All right, now I'm going to select all 3 of those, and I'm going to make that a component, and we'll call it Rope Handle 6-inch, so it makes some sense. And before I complete making the component, I want to set the component axes, and I also want to give the component gluing properties. And I'll do the gluing property first. I'm going to make it so it'll go to any, but you could choose whatever you want. If you only want it to glue to vertical faces, you could do that, or sloped, whatever. But we'll use any. Now, by default, SketchUp always wants to put the component's origin at the lower front left corner. And in this case, what it's doing is it's showing us where the gluing plane would be, which is on the ground plane, or at the actually at the bottom of the component. But that's not where I want that, so I'm going to choose Set Component Axes. And this is why I positioned that initial rectangle the way I did, because I can use the model origin to set my component origin, and I can use the red axis, and then instead of running the green along the, parallel to the model green axis, I want that to go up. So my gluing plane is going to be vertical in this orientation anyway of the handle. And then I can choose Create. All right, so again, when I did that, I ended up with my component's origin right in the middle, but 3/4 of an inch in, which means my rope is going to, handle is going to go through the surface, which I want it to look like there could be a hole there for it. So let's do something like, I don't know, just create a quick board. And actually I'm just going to go ahead and make that thicker. Doesn't matter that much, but so now you can see that if I put my cursor on the top, the handle is standing up. Here it would be in the orientation it's most likely going to get used, but it would also work on the end. So I could go either way this way, and because it's centered, because my insertion point is centered, I can use, say, that midpoint as a reference and place that. So now that handle is centered left to right on that face. So I just keep bringing in handles and sticking them wherever I need them, and makes it quite easy to use that thing. So hopefully you could find some use for something like a rope handle, or this could represent twisted metal. It could be rope molding. You could use it for that sort of thing. Lots of different options for using something like this. So hopefully you find something useful there. Thanks for watching.